What's up, guys? Today I'm going to talk about the second round of the NBA playoffs in the East. The teams playing are the 76ers versus the Hawks and the Bucks versus the Nets. The Knicks lost to the Hawks in the first round, and this loss was devastating towards the Knicks. It was devastating because it was their first year back in playoffs, and they were led by their all-star Julius Randle. I know a lot of people last year hated him, but he changed a lot of people's mind and his image. Now he's known as All-Star all throughout the league, even though he didn't play well in this series. He got valuable experience this season with Coach Tom Thibodeau leading him, and this Coach Tom Thibodeau, had a major part in getting the Knicks to the playoffs too. Tom Thibodeau stepped in and gave this team a leader, along with getting Derrick Rose for Dennis Smith Jr., who was originally traded for Porzingis, who's not playing well. Tom Thibodeau brought in Derrick Rose, and Derrick Rose played amazing this series. It's good to see Derrick Rose playing back in the playoffs, and it's even better to see him playing amazing, even though they lost to Trae Young. The Hawks-Knicks series was crazy. Trae Young got spit on. There was a lot of tension, and the series ended 4-1 to the Hawks, of course. The 76ers-Wizards series was dominating performance by the 76ers. It was a 4-1 series, and Russ got popcorn poured on him, and a fan charged out onto the court for Game 4. The fan was at the Wizards arena, but there were many Sixers fans there, and if he was, that might be why Sixers fans are at the bottom of every fan tier list. The Sixers need Joel Embiid in this series, but he got injured Game 4, which was the game the Wizards won. The 76ers closed him out in Game 5 without Joel Embiid for most of the game. The Bucks swept the Heat 4-0, and the Heat didn't have much to say. The Heat's future might have been crushed by the Bucks this series, and with this win, keeping Giannis. I did a video on the Heat if you want to know more about them. The Nets also beat the Celtics 4-1. The Celtics went crazy one game, with Jason Tatum dropping 50. The Nets' offense was too much for the Celtics to handle, and the Celtics fell in 5 games. The Celtics president stepped down, and their young coach, Brad Stevens, stepped up. The Celtics definitely have to find out where they're going in the future in this offseason. The Nets should prepare for face the Bucks, who might be their toughest matchup even if they win against them, or even if they win the championship. My prediction for this upcoming series is 4-2, with the 76ers winning. The 76ers have been dominant all season, and the only way the Hawks have a chance, in my opinion, is for Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons to get injured. Of course, Joel Embiid got hurt in Game 4 of the Wizards series, but I think he'll be fine when he gets back because it seemed minor enough. The tweet says his knee was sore, which doesn't seem that bad in my opinion. The Hawks' offense will have to be explosive, which is why I expect them to win some games. If Trae Young not drawing all his fouls, then they have more options to go to. Trae Young is a young player, not much experience in playoffs. They might bring up the point of how they beat the Knicks, a defensive team. But for me, this isn't as valid as it sounds. Trae Young curved up that Knicks defense because the Knicks didn't have great defense against the pick and roll, while the 76ers are known as better defenders. 76ers are also larger overall. Trae might just be smothered by this defense. 76ers have a world-class defender, Ben Simmons, and if they go to John Collins, the Hawks might have offensive success. The Hawks will need to come out ready to make shots every game if they want to have a chance. And lucky for them, they have some of the best shooters in the league. The Hawks will need to play great defense. Yes, they had awesome offense all season, but Trae Young and John Collins aren't exactly defensive stoppers. The Hawks have to have at least hold on to Joel Embiid down a little bit, which they have Clint Capella to do, who is a good defender, but they'll need him to really step up in this series to have a chance. I think Clint Capella will do good, but not great at defending Joel Embiid. In my opinion, Joel Embiid would have been the MVP if he hadn't got hurt. The Hawks have a hard time guarding the size of the 76ers team. The 76ers team's sheer size will just body them in the paint, especially if they have good spacing. The 76ers offense will most likely have Joel Embiid scoring around 30 points a game in the series if he doesn't get hurt again and if he's fully healthy. I think Tobias Harris will be a major contributor in this series on the offensive side of the ball. The Hawks don't have much size, so I think the 76ers could take advantage of this on the offensive side of the ball. The 76ers are going to need to make shots, force defenders to guard the outside shots. This is going to open up the middle, and this is where their main players thrive. When I watched Joel Embiid in the Wizards series, he looked unstoppable when he tried to score. The 76ers were playing Maxey, a rookie out of Kentucky. He played a lot in this last series against the Wizards. And in these games he looked quick, but I don't see him shooting, and I don't think he's going to play much in the Hawks series unless they're up by 1 or 2 games in the series, because I think they'll need more spacers other than Maxey. On defense, the 76ers, one of the best in the league. They have Joel Embiid to guard Clint Capella or John Collins, and they have Ben Simmons guard Collins or Trae Young. The Sixers also have bench players such as Danny Green and Shake Milton to provide reliable defense, and I think the Sixers will have to figure out how to guard the pick and roll that the Hawks destroyed the Knicks with. I think they have the personnel to do it too. If Joel Embiid is healthy, then this series might last less than 6 games. But because of that risk of Joel Embiid missing some games, I think having the Hawks win 2 games in the series is fair. My prediction is that the Bucks win in 7 games. This series could go either ways. Both are dominant teams, don't get me wrong. The Nets were impressive against the Celtics, but I guess that's what happens when you put 3 high-level All-Stars on the same team. Many people think the Nets could go all the way to the championship, but I think the Bucks have a pretty good chance at beating them this round. The Bucks added Drew Holiday to the roster in trade for Eric Bledsoe and some picks. Drew has been great this season, and he is able to shoot and score on offense while still getting back and playing elite defense. I think Drew will guard Kyrie Irving this season, and just because Harden is a little bigger than him, and if Harden gets the hot hand, maybe he'll try Drew on him, but Harden is also an elite level passer, so I don't really think it'll matter. He'll just pass it away. The Bucks' offense will be good this series. They score a lot of points against the Heat, who are kind of a mess right now, don't get me wrong, but they still scored a lot on a good defensive team. The main matchup against the Bucks on offense will be KD and Giannis, and Middleton presumably on Harden. The Bucks are 22nd in points given up per game in the regular season, with 114 points per game given up. But they held Miami this year in the playoffs to an average of 98 points per game. That stat makes Bucks fans hope this defense of the first round can be replicated against a better team, such as the Nets. The Nets are going to be explosive offensively, so of course they can't hope to hold the Nets under 100 points on average, but they can hope to hold them to less than average. On the offensive side of the ball, the Bucks average 20.1 points per game during the regular season, giving them the most points per game in the league during the regular season. During the season, they shot well as a three-point team, but during the Heat series, they only shot 32% from three-point range. I'm not too worried about this because there wasn't much urgency in that series. The Heat just crumpled, and I'm not too worried about that stat. In this series, the Bucks might have to lean on Middleton or Drew for more scoring. Giannis will be guarded by Durant, and I think Durant might step up. But also, Giannis will probably be double-teamed a lot. A small fact is that KD and Giannis weigh the same amount. That's crazy. I don't know how. Giannis is like buff. KD's like skinny. I know I'm not as buff as them, but come on. I think Brook Lopez spacing the floor might be important for this team in the series. This will make it harder for Jordan or whoever's playing center to double Giannis. The Bucks overall need to make sure they're making all their three-pointers, not all, but most of their three-pointers, you know what I mean. They need to shoot better percentage from three, and they need to continue their defensive presence that they had in the first round. The Nets, on the other hand, this year was seen by most people by favorites in the East. The East is stacked, and although they have a chance of winning this series, I think the Bucks have a better chance. The Nets on defense will have to hope and rely on KD to guard Giannis, and hope he can at least contain him. It will be interesting to see if the Nets try and zone defense if Giannis is doing well, but we'll see. We'll see if the Bucks are knocking down shots, and that'll probably determine if we see a zone defense. The Bucks are a powerhouse offensively, so the Nets need to contain them. The Bucks can try and stay home and hope the Bucks don't shoot well from three-point range, but the Bucks only shot 32% from three in their last series. So it's going to be interesting if the Nets double Giannis in the paint or just leave KD to guard him. There's no easy way to decide what to do for the Nets because it's like pick your poison. And you're just hoping that poison isn't poison, I guess. That's a weird analogy, but yeah. The Nets also have to find a way to guard Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton. These guys can score. These guys can outright score. And when it's the last minute of the game, they're going to these guys. They're going to Chris Middleton rather than Giannis. This was shown in last year's playoffs against the Heat, and I think it's going to show in this year's playoffs. They might try and go to Jrue if he's hot, if he's shooting well. But either way, the Nets need to find a way to reduce these players' scoring. The Jrue Holiday and Giannis pick could roll. The Jrue Holiday and Giannis pick and roll could be deadly this series. Because if they try have whoever guarding Jrue Holiday, presumably Kyrie, go under the pick, then they could just have Jrue shoot the ball. I know, it's rocket science, but Jrue is good at shooting. He shoots a high percentage from three. And if his threes are going in, they might keep going to this. And they might have Kyrie or whoever's guarding Jrue go above the screen. And if they have the person guarding Jrue go above the screen, they have a Giannis and Jrue both going downhill towards the basket. That's not what you want in a series. You don't want to give that up. So, presumably, you have to bring help for this. And then you just have to rely on Steve Nash coaching. Steve Nash coaching, great coaching, but his defensive coaching is going to be put to the test this series. And if he can guard the Bucks' explosive offense. Lots of plays in the Bucks' arsenal. The Bucks have lots of weapons too. And he has to still maintain their explosive offense from last series. I think the Nets' offense has to be explosive and will be explosive. Against the Celtics, the Nets averaged 123.5 points per game, which is a ton, the most averaged in the playoffs so far. While the Celtics didn't have Jaylen Brown during the series, it was domination. Kyrie had amazing nights. Harden has amazing nights. Durant had amazing nights. It was absolute domination. In the only game the Celtics won, Tatum had to drop 50, and it was an all-around effort by that team. All-around push. The Nets are simply too talented for them, though. And they're gonna face a team in the Bucks just as talented than them, in my opinion. And that's gonna put Steve Nash's coaching to the test, especially on defense, where it's gonna matter a lot because these are both heavy scoring teams. The Nets will probably rely on Harden a little more in this series because he'll probably be guarded by Chris Middleton. I think Harden will be able to get past him a lot and a lot of ISOs. So he's going to probably be double teamed a lot. A lot of passing and playmaking by Harden you can probably expect in this series. Overall, Nets have to continue their dominant offensive performance with their big three, but they also have to make sure to guard the Bucks. The Bucks, I know they weren't that last year, but they're a powerhouse offensive team this year. Overall, I think the Sixers will have this series in the bag if they stray away from injury, although the Hawks might have a chance if Capella plays good enough defense and they hit enough shots. The Nets series could go either way. However, I think the Bucks need to pick up three-point shooting from last series and continue to dominate defensively. And if the Nets want to win, they need to continue their scoring spree while picking up a little more on the defensive end. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. And if you did, like and sub if you want, and see you next time.